Thank you, Leon. Thank you for D4D for having me and for putting this salon together. I feel nostalgic because it's the last paper we are presenting after 1 year and a half of joint cooperation with Leon as an analyst. Just to explain how this paper came around and what is our project about. Before Brussels Agreement was announced, we put together a project proposal which was supported by something called the International Visegrad Fund, which is a nice funding instrument of the 4 foreign ministries of Czech Republic, Poland, Hungary, and Slovakia. Some ambassadors are present here. You know that Poland is not present because Poland doesn't have the embassy. Unlike the non-recognized Slovakia, which has Markus here, which is active here. I'm a national of Slovakia. I've been dealing with the Western Balkan issues for more than a decade, maybe too long, also with Kosovo. And I'm grateful that I can present a paper, a joint work, a result of a joint work here tonight. The intention from the very beginning, before it was put together, was to create a joint discourse. So we knew that analysts from Pristina, Leon Malazoglu, analysts from Belgrade, Filibeidus, a young professor of security studies in Belgrade, and analysts from the Visegrad countries. Now, my think tank, Central European Policy Institute, based in Bratislava, was in coordinating function, but we have had Czech and Polish and Hungarian analysts taking part. Should try to put together a joint discourse on the dialogue. And we had a number of joint fact-finding missions to North Kosovo during elections in November 2013. After recall in Mitrovica, we had several public debates in the Visegrad countries, in capitals, and actually also in Belgrade in April. This is the last one. Last week we were in Brussels. We had a public debate there for people from Brussels-based institutions and the Slovak permanent mission to the EU. For the first time, they had Kosovar diplomats taking part in the audience. One day before, we went around the institutions, including the AIS and the team that is doing dialogue under High Rep Ashton. So Anna-Marie Bura was given the paper directly to her hand, so we had an effective distribution of the last paper. I think it was great experience, which convinced me that among analysts at least, joint conclusions and joint discussions and viewpoints are possible on the issues that divide Serbia and Kosovo. Of course, we are not in government, so we are more independent. But one rule that we had is that every line that is there on the paper everybody should feel comfortable with it. Leon, as well as somebody from Pristina, as well as somebody from Belgrade. Now, our 2 previous papers can be accessed on web pages of our respective organizations. The previous 2 papers were more focused on the substance of previous discussions and talks, on the future of North Kosovo especially, on elections, on things that were in the Brussels Agreement and which are not implemented fully. You mentioned the Kurd justice issues, you mentioned the ISM. So in our second paper, this point before this one, in February, we actually predicted, I think correctly, that 2014 will be mostly a time out. Because we could see the elections coming on, and we said, well, no agreement on ISM, Association of Serbian Municipalities. A lot from the Brussels Agreement put in place. Serbia given the accession talks with the EU. But now it seems there will be a timeout, and it's very important what will happen after the timeout and how long the timeout will be. And this is where we are. This is the key moment now. We published our paper last week, a few days before Cathy Ashton finishes her job, before her successor Federica Mogherini takes over, before she will put in place some priorities, before she will set her style, which is important also for the dialogue, before she decides how soon and from what perspective she will tackle this issue. And also, we didn't know how long the impasse would last, but thanks to not having government here, it lasts longer than we thought. I think it's key that a new momentum will come back, because I have to say this here before I come back to prepare remarks. I also realize every week when I'm working in Bratislava and I visit Brussels and Washington, this is different Europe than when we started our project. This is different Europe than even when we presented the second paper, last paper in February. And this is Europe which is shaped by new security concerns of European member states due to conflict between Russia and Ukraine, which is a hybrid war, and which is putting everything in the Balkans in a different perspective. I would say that we were maybe, all of us that deal with the Western Balkan issues, you that were leading the dialogue, were maybe spoiled by a lot of attention that you had from the top people in the EU foreign policy, including Lady Ashton herself. This was a time when Europe didn't have an open conflict at its borders. This was a time when the Brussels agreement between Serbia and Kosovo could be declared the biggest success story of European foreign policy and of the EAIS in particular. Now everything is shaped by other concerns. A confrontation, long period of conflict, or we don't know how long, but probably a long confrontation between the EU and Russia, between the West and Russia, where Russia can make more trouble in places outside of its zone of influence per se. For instance, in the Western Balkans. For instance, by stirring up more tensions between Albanian countries, Albanian-speaking countries, and Serbian-speaking countries, between Belgrade and Tirana, Belgrade, Pristina, and so on. I think our main message in this paper, and now I will come to the recommendations and other things. The main message and main concern there was that things are more fragile than many people think in the EU, in Brussels and in member states. That this is not job done. This is not finished. This will require. This is just the start of a long-term process. We are witnessing something which can potentially be a rapprochement, a true historical rapprochement between Serbia and Kosovo. If things move on in a positive way, and in order to do to make sure that they move in a positive way, it will require more attention, more support, more smart diplomacy from the EU. This is not managed in such a way that you can leave it on autopilot and go and spend the rest of you can spend of time on Ukraine or Iran or other issues that are there. So I think it's important moment. It's very important how Federica Mogherini will do this, and it's important this will not fall down in her priorities, knowing that it's nothing to be jealous about, because she cannot repeat the success of Cathy Ashton. This is not very, from psychological point of view, it's not something that she can treat as her own story, her own success, her own project. No, she will inherit this from Cathy Ashton. She will be in her shadow, but it's very important that she will try hard, and she will put an ambitious agenda on the table. Why we think she should do it? I think it's because, number one, this is in the courtyard of Europe. This is the heart of the Western Balkans, which is now surrounded by EU member states. There's no other place in the world where EU is so heavily invested, so heavily present as here. Not only with EULEX and the EUSR, with all the embassies. Nowhere else EU is the important actor. Although we know that US friends are somewhere there, always leading from behind or supporting from behind. interesting enough, we are not discussing the US role anymore, but I think it's important. They were not ready to lead anymore in the Western Balkans. This is the time where EU should take care of its own neighborhood. What the EU has put on its shoulders was de facto change of sovereignty, de jure change of sovereignty from one state to another, integration of northern Kosovo into Kosovo, without a single life lost, without dead people. This is very much about, I'm talking about last 2 years. I'm talking about last 2 years where the Brussels agreement was announced and the implementation was a big unknown. And a lot of skepticism out there against your government, against the Serbian side. Then we had the elections in Serbia where Kosovo was no longer discussed. So something important has taken place, I think, between you and Serbia that will be in the history books. Now, things could have been done better, always. But it's important to I think, realize that it was somehow history in the making. We are critical about how it was done. We think that Cathy Ashton was given a lot of sort of praise, but things were not exactly clear about what was there in the Brussels agreement, whether it was an agreement in the first place. So, if I move on to our recommendations, bearing in mind 10 minutes allocated.
It's passed already.
Okay. So let me just read out the papers with you. Number one, generate new momentum. It's very important that we somehow, the political dialogue is reconvened. And the conditionality that is there, and it's strong, I believe, on both sides, also on Serbia, to the accession talks, should be used at full potential. Number two, before the new high rep Mogherini tackles the new issues, she should finish what is not finalized in terms of implementation from the Brussels agreement. So the ISM, the court, and all other things should be first fully implemented. Otherwise, if she tackles new issues, I think it will not be credible. Finalize what is not being finished with both sides. Number three, when scaling up the ambitions for her mandate for Serbia-Kosovo dialogue, she has 5 years at her disposal. We believe that within these 5 years, almost all outstanding issues between Serbia and Kosovo can be resolved, save the recognition. But we believe that what's possible is decoupling recognition from all other practical issues. And we think that an ever-broadening scope of regular Serbia-Kosovo talks, not only technical, but also political issues, should be put in place and presented to both sides from the EIS. Number four, the High Rep Mogherini should introduce greater clarity into what will be agreed. We believe that the constructive ambiguity used on the Brussels agreement and successive other agreements, also in technical dialogue, has been used to full potential. It's on the one hand to say that the EIS is facilitated, and it's up to both sides then to announce what has been agreed to their own respective publics. But I think this attitude is inviting manipulation from leaders on both sides. I think from now on, in the new phase, in the new stage, ambiguity and unclarity should be used as rather the exception than the rule. And somebody, maybe IS, maybe some other institution, should explain what has been agreed. Also aim for real approximation of positions between both governments. That was recommendation number 4. Number 5, if you think about long-term game, I think there is a need for a genuine autochthonous elite among Kosovo Serbs from the north in particular. We all see what has happened in the last elections. fine to deal with Belgrade, but eventually you will need to deal with Mitrovica. And the people who will stay there, it's their future, it's their community itself should generate its own leaders that will have relationship with Belgrade and Pristina, but I think they should represent their own community. And the EU should help get there. Number 6, last recommendation, advance the three-track approach. So while you have political dialogue between both governments and you have technical dialogue, I think there should be also an inner domestic political dialogue between Pristina and Mitrovica here, northern Mitrovica. So between leaders of this government and leaders of Kosovo-Serbi. Now, these are recommendations aimed at the EU. This was intended because in previous 2 papers we addressed Belgrade, Pristina, and people in the north. Outlining these 6 recommendations, of course, doesn't take away the responsibility from Kosovar Serbs and their political leadership for what's going on and what will be coming. It's about them, prime ministers of the countries in particular, to shape public opinion in their countries. There will always be a lot of populism around, but I think in order to move towards a neighborhood that is stable and that is part of a region that is not a troublemaker anymore, but that is aiming to the EU, I think it's up to your new Prime Minister and to Prime Minister Vučić to come closer to some kind of historic rapprochement, which we think is doable within the next 5 years. And last but not least, I think by not having a government here, every week you're losing points. If I could say one thing as a strong recommendation for this country and for your public diplomacy and the dialogue, get your act together and get the government. It's hurting you much more than it will. Thank you.